Hi, this is Dave Worden. I'd like to talk a little bit about tuning a euphonium. It's slightly complex because there are three kinds of euphoniums. There are 3-valve euphoniums, 4-valve euphoniums that are non-compensating. So when I started on euphonium in 5th grade, it was a 3-valve instrument. In 10th grade or 11th grade, somewhere in there, I got a 4-valve non-compensating instrument. It was an American King instrument. Then in college, I got a Besson, and that was a 4-valve compensating horn, much like this design here. They all start the same, though, because on any of those instruments, the first thing you have to do is tune the first 3 valves, not to mention the main horn. There's a main tuning slide, you've probably found that already on the instrument, that controls your overall pitch. Set that first to a B flat. I'd suggest this B flat, or C if you're reading treble clef music. But that's the open note of the horn. It's in the middle of the horn's range. If you tune to the lower B flat, on some instruments that's not quite as well in tune as the one in the middle, and the chops can also get a little bit looser there and not have as good a center for the pitch. So I like to pick the middle B flat to start with. So then you've got the horn in tune, and I'm assuming you'll use a tuner, something like this, a small electronic tuner. This one has a metronome built into it as well. It's very small, easy to carry, runs forever on some AAA batteries, so it's a great invention and a good thing to have. Find your note on this, get it in tune on the main horn. Then the next thing you want to check, although there's not a lot we can do about it, is how well in tune the second valve is. The 3-valve system, if nothing's down, the air goes straight through. If you push the second valve down, it goes through the slide attached to the second valve. The second valve changes the pitch by 1/2 step. So it goes from B flat down to A, or in treble clef, from C down to B. So tune that note. But the slide is so short, if you can see this, the leg on the slide is perhaps 3/8, on the short end of the leg is maybe 3/8 of an inch long. If you pull it out very far at all, it'll probably fall out as you're playing, so we don't usually adjust that very much. Moving on though to the first valve. Now this one lowers the horn by a whole step. So that would be from B flat to A flat, or in treble clef from C to a B flat. And it's obviously controlled by this slide here. So go down from your tuning note, one whole step to the B flat treble clef, A flat bass clef, and adjust this to get that in tune. Now the next one would be the third valve. That gets a little trickier to talk about. If you're playing a compensating instrument, like this one is, or even any instrument really with a 4th valve, you can fudge on that tuning a little bit for a reason I'll explain in a minute. But basically, this valve here would lower the instrument by 1.5 steps, or a minor third. That'd be from B flat down to G, or in treble clef, from C down to A. Most players tend to use 1 and 2 instead. The problem with any brass instrument that uses valves is any valve can be made to lower the horn by the right amount. So if I want to lower by that minor third we just heard, I can tune this exactly to a G, or a treble clef A. Get my tuner out and make this perfect for that note. Well, that's fine, but then on a 3-valve horn, at some point I'm going to get down to 1 and 3 together, or 1, 2, and 3. And now, this first valve that can be the perfect length to lower the horn by that whole step. When I add this much tubing, you have all this extra tubing now on the wrap of the instrument. So the horn is this much longer than it was before. This much tubing is not enough to lower it from here to here by a full whole step. What I might suggest for that for 3-valve players is to go to the 2 and 3 note right away. That would be in the bass clef, that's an F sharp, or in the treble clef, that's a G sharp. Tune the 3rd valve so that's in tune. Then when you go to 1 and 3, it will probably be a little bit sharp. So your choice is there, because now we've tuned each of the individual valves. So now we're starting to deal with compromises if we want to tune further down that chromatic scale. So if we go down to the 1 and 3 note, if it's a little sharp, we have 2 choices. We can pull that 3rd slide even further, and the only notes that will really affect badly are the notes we're playing with 2 and 3. They get a little flatter. So you can find maybe position in the middle of too flat and too sharp for either one of those notes. 1, 2, and 3 is really kind of a loss. It's very, very sharp. And there's not a lot you can do about it with standard tubing. You might have to pull a slide on the fly if you really have an exposed note. A lot of arrangers or composers avoid that note when they're writing for younger level bands that are going to have 3-valve instruments. But it's very sharp. So 1, 2, and 3 is always a problem. If you go down chromatically from the B flat, that gets you down to an E concert or an F sharp in treble clef. But we wouldn't normally play that with those valves. We'd have fewer valves by that point because we switch over to open once we get down to the F or the G in treble. So no problem, right? But if we want to go lower, down to the low C and the low B, or in treble clef the D and C sharp, then we've got problems because there's no other fingerings we can use. We have to use those combinations of 1 and 3 and 1, 2, and 3. Now that's pretty sharp. In theory, we'd like that to be the same as the octave above it for intonation. It's about a quarter step sharper. And like I said, there's not a lot we can do to help that. Now, if you have a 4-valve instrument, it gets a lot easier. Whether it's compensating or non-compensating, when you're going on that lower scale, below that, the next note is a C concert or a D in treble. You can now play that with a 4th valve. The 4th valve was really made to replace 1 and 3. It's roughly the same length as 1 and 3 put together. So that is the next note you would tune. Set your tuner, play the note, and you want a concert C, or as I said, a D in treble clef. Now that will leave the 1, 2, and 3 fingering. Instead of doing that, you remember 4th valve replaces 1 and 3. So we use the 4th valve plus 2. And it'll usually be a little bit sharp on those horns, but not too bad. Certainly usable. That gives you a very good scale through the normal playing range. Principles are the same when you tune a compensating instrument. Now, a 4-valve compensating euphonium compensates for the notes where you're using 4th valve plus one of these. So if I have the 4th valve down, we have that same cumulative error where the 4th valve adds, it's hard to see where it starts, but it starts back here, goes through all this tubing and back through the valves. It adds quite a bit of extra length to the instrument by putting the 4th valve down. Well, this 1st valve is going to be way short to give another whole step if you're using the 4th valve as well. So on the compensating horns, generally on the back side, they have 3 extra loops back here. So when I put the 4th valve down and the 1st valve is the only time this comes into play. When I have just the 1st valve down, no errors going through here, it's just using the front loop, which is satisfactory. But we need an additional bit of length when I'm using the 4th valve and the 1st valve. So pushing 4 down would make it go through the front loop as it did before, but also add this loop on. So that gives you better intonation there. That means then, if you're going down, for example, to a low C, I'll start on the low, what we normally call a low C, an octave below middle C bass clef. And for treble clef, that's the D just beneath the staff. We're down a major scale. So on that note, I'm using 1, 3, and 4 together. Now we've already tuned 4, and we probably want to leave it where it is. We've already tuned 1 and 3 for the upper range. But if the note's very sharp, this horn anyway has 2 tuning slides back here that can help. Both these are removable slides. Some horns don't have the 1st valve compensating loop with a slide on it. Not unlike the 2nd valve on the front of the horn. If you can see here, the 2nd valve compensating loop is so short you couldn't put a slide on it. And the 1st valve loop is also very short, so the slide isn't very long. We've covered now how to tune the various slides on the instrument. Unfortunately, for example, with the 1st valve, not all 1st valve notes will be at the same pitch as you go up. Some of those notes, depending on your horn, may be a little sharp or a little flat, and you'll have to compensate those with your lip and your air. Or if you're playing in a piece that really seems to hammer on a note that's a little flat all the time, well, my first valve is pulled not very far, 3/16 of an inch perhaps. I could push it in to play that piece, and just remember that's not my normal tuning. Other than that, we just have to learn to use our chops to help us with that. I hope that helps a little bit clear up some of the confusion about tuning. There's no magic answers for it, but there are some basics that we covered, and beyond that, you just have to sort of work with whatever compromises might go above and beyond that to help you get your particular instrument in tune. Thanks for listening, and if you want to check out more of these videos, I have several other how-to videos and also a lot of performance videos on my Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter channels. So check them out and see what you think. Thanks very much.